So with that, let me introduce Executive Editor of CNet, Molly Wood, to get us started.
I think somehow Alan has cleverly transferred the pressure of the beer to us. That's not cool. Actually, it is cool because I want to share in the beer should we manage to succeed in winning this Twitter war with your help. Welcome to the Disrupting the Drive session, everyone. It's a really good one. I'm very excited about our panel today. Let me start by introducing Jim Buczkowski, who you know as the Chief Geek here at Ford. His official title is Technical Fellow and Director of Electrical and Electronic Systems Ford Research and Innovation. He's also the biggest engineering evangelist I know. How big is
Fine print.
Very, very, very small type. And of course, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, inventor, teacher, dancer. And I recently learned that this man likes to drive fast, so he is in good company here.
Not super fast.
I don't know.
I've never taken some of my cars to their limit.
Close though, I heard.
Maybe
Maybe if we win that beer thing, he'll tell you about it later.
It's not like you have to like to drive fast. When you're on Highway 5, you don't really have a choice.
That's true. 80 is the minimum on Highway 5, we determined.
News to me.
All right, so I want to start a little bit. I know that everybody knows all about you guys, but I want to, dig into your background a little bit. Talk to me. You're a second-generation Ford guy, aren't you?
I am. My dad worked for Ford for almost 41 years, not in the electrical, electronics, or engineering area. He was a lawyer and so on, and so I grew up with Ford my entire career, and in the Detroit area and so on. I've had some experiences outside of the area as well too, but it's Ford true blood all the way through. And he wanted me to actually become a lawyer like himself. I was always interested in technology in high school, science fair projects and all the rest, and did a lot of tinkering and so on. And so we decided that I'd become a patent engineer. Well, I finished the undergraduate degree in engineering and really loved it and never went on to law school. So here I am. I think he's happy with the result, even though I didn't go to law school.
I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
And then Steve, would you call yourself a car geek at all? I mean, now that there's such a good intersection of tech and cars?
Well, you know what? I grew up with technology and loving it and gadgets and what equipment can do, and I loved reading tables of numbers that compared things. That's not really the best way to compare things now in my mind, but so of course, I'd always look at the cars and the comparisons, but I'm more of an electronics tech geek.
Yeah, these guys have the hardware.
Sure, yeah, and like Jim, I grew up with science fair projects, so by 5th grade I got to a project with 100 switches and 100 lights, and all this painting and huge things I had to drill and hook together all the wires and wrap-ups, and this is a huge project. So I was a builder of electronics, and by 6th grade got a ham radio license. You have to study all the formulas of electronics and how electrons go through different kinds of parts and make radios and that sort of stuff, and pass your tests and learn Morse code. And then by then I was also building parts with hundreds of transistors that would play tic-tac-toe. So I had such an early start, but I was so shy. I couldn't ask anyone what a computer was. They had no books in schools or in the libraries or anything. But by high school, I got given the privilege to go down and program a computer. Computers were further out than rocket science in those days. I mean, they really were they were more strange and farther away. And wow, I learned that a computer can be really fast, 1 million things a second, and it still can't solve problems without a human mind to direct it. And we're still at that stage. But then I started designing my own computers. I had my experience from elementary school designing things out of logic, and I now got books, manuals on what computers were. I sat down on paper and taught myself, no books. Tried, it took weeks and weeks, and I started trying to improve it, make it better with fewer parts. And I got to where I could design almost any computer in the world in 2 days while I was in high school. And I told my dad, I am gonna own a 4K computer someday. 4K, because 4K was enough memory to run a computer language so you could type in programs and solve problems. 1 million things a second. Someday I was gonna own one, and he said it costs as much as a house. And I was stymied at the kitchen table, and I said, I'm gonna live in an apartment. Because I threw down the gauntlet outlet. I was gonna have a computer somehow, someday.
You know,
So-
we share an early experience because one of the early projects I did was to build a tic-tac-toe game as well too. And very basic.
Oh my gosh.
But really enjoyed it and really set the tone. You know, my first experience in microcontrollers, microcomputers and so on actually was here at Ford. I was a summer student in college, and I was telling Molly and Steve the story last night is the company used to use chase vehicles, vans, filled with FM tape recorders. If you remember, if anybody remembers reel-to-reel recorders, that's how they would collect data. And there'd be this umbilical cord that would go to the car, which would have sensors on it, and they'd have to follow each other. And so I was here for a summer, and it was microcontrollers were first coming out, and we were creating basically a box that could collect the data on board the vehicle without these big FM recorders. So it was significant from this huge van that was filled with the reel-to-reel equipment to just a small little box about this size to collect the same information.
So can you?
If you did tic-tac-toe, did you do what I did? Start on a piece of paper and you play every single game. Takes about 2 days
Yeah.
and make notes of which squares will lead to what actions.
That's right.
Wow.
I wish you guys still have those plans to compare and see who's
But
better.
that's the heart, really, of making great products, even in the automobile industry, is really going down to the little nuts and bolts and spending a lot of time at a low-level thing, because when you're doing new things, after you've done it, it's good. Now you can think, everybody says, oh my gosh, this is easy, this is the formula, but somebody has to come up with ideas the first time.
That's true. So, well, hopefully we'll come up with some good ideas today. The format of this session is a little bit different, as Alan mentioned, partly because we have videos to be our guide. But so before we jump into that, so we'll show you a series of videos as our discussion progresses. Before we jump into that, Jim, I mean, how have you seen the car change in your time as a tinkerer and engineer and working here at Ford?
Well, it's really interesting because cars always have been disconnected. You know, you leave the house, you get in your car, and you're kind of, other than the four wheels touching the road and so on, you're kind of disconnected with all the rest of the environments. And today, now with connectivity, phones, mobile phones, other modems, all the rest, we're now seeing vehicles can be connected continuously to the road and the infrastructure and so on. And so these examples that you're going to see here are part of our concept vehicle called EVOS. And our EVOS is the vision of how the car is going to be connected in the future, how it's going to be continually connected, but more than that, the kind of experiences we can create with a vehicle that's connected all the time. How can we make the experience in the vehicle one that's seamless with your lifestyle outside of the vehicle? And again, I want to emphasize that use of experience because, and I know Steve and I've talked about this quite a bit, is that it is all about creating experience. Technology is a tool and an enabler to create great experiences.
Well, you know, the more you build in a lot of this connectivity, it should be very optional, mostly for the passenger, because I go home and I've got my computer hours and hours a day, and we're moving with our mobile devices and keeping up with things, and you know what, sometimes to me, the car is the escape. It's like you used to go down in the evening with your family and just watch the TV in the living room and you escape from the whole rest of the world. Now you're always constantly with your mobile devices. Well, driving a car is a real good excuse to have time to just think a little bit, thoughts of your own, you know. And so there's good advantages. So you want it to help you drive the car. You want to improve your driving experience, but you want it to be very much out of your way too. Just understand you as a person.
So in terms of that sort of experience of driving, experience of being in the car, what kind of technological disruption do you think would improve your driving experience?
Actually, connection to online news resources I don't rule out. I still love the radio going. It's like even white noise. Even if my thoughts are dreaming off new product ideas and whatever. Navigation is probably the most important one right now. But navigation systems are. It's like, oh my gosh, everybody's getting them. But they also, you tend to wind up saying every navigation system will lead you astray, and but it'll get you back on. And I just want navigation systems to work like a human, describe the roads coming up and where my turn is the way a human being that was in the car with you would. We don't yet have something like viewing through the windshield, a real view of the roads in front and which one to take. I guess if we had one of those, what do they call it, windshield views that the pilots have?
Augmented reality, like iRobot, the movie. Right?
Well, AR, augmented reality is what you want, is something that's absolutely showing you exactly kind of which lane to be in long in advance and speaking to you well. And so there's a good thing to help me with my driving, because I'm always going to places. And I always want to go to a place, I don't know the address or the route very often. Take me to this new restaurant, you know, and drive me from, get me out of the city, just get me home.
You know, along those lines, the vision for navigation really has to be to take me from where I am to where I want to be. And that's not just my car from where it is to where I need it to be. It's me to my car to the location closest to where I want to be, and then that last bit from the parking lot to, you know, the restaurant or wherever my final location is. And I don't want to have to be transferring back and forth between my handheld navigation system and the vehicle and then back to the handheld and so on. Just like it to be seamless.
Yeah, you might have been in your room and you know I've got to get to a certain restaurant or a certain conference center or a certain meeting somewhere, and you know it and could just speak it, but you really want the guidance all the way there, yeah.
Right. All right, well, we are starting to see some visions of the future. I think it is a good point for us to jump into our first EVOS concept video and check out that vision of one possible future.
Imagine that you're a busy professional who commutes to work in the city. You love to drive and have a little fun whenever you can. That's why you own the ultra-smart, cloud-connected Ford EVOS concept. The cloud is the place where all of your important data and personal information are stored. But thanks to the Ford EVOS concept, you don't even have to think about that. Your Ford EVOS knows all about your preferences, your needs, your health, your work schedule, and more. The car has the power to pull and process information from the cloud to provide you with a seamless, connected lifestyle. Even before you wake up in the morning, your car interacts with the cloud to help ensure that you'll have a great day. The car pulls traffic and weather information, as well as information about your work schedule, to determine what time you should wake up. Today, it turns out that your coworker is running late for your morning meeting. There's no need to get to the office early, so your car communicates to your alarm clock through the cloud to grant you an extra hour of sleep. Later on, while getting ready for work, let's say you enjoy listening to internet radio streaming through your iPad to speakers around the house. When you get to your car, the entertainment experience continues, because the car already knows what you were listening to inside. The car is also already cooled just the way you like it, taking the weather and your personal preferences into account. To maximize energy for the commute, the cabin has been conditioned using power from the grid, which is delivered through the wireless charging pad built into the garage floor. As you start up and pull away, the vehicle sends a message to the cloud indicating that it's time to switch the house into energy-efficient mode and close the garage door.
All right, that's a lot of faith in the car to talk to the alarm clock. That seems like a big, that one would make me a little nervous.
Well, I think, you know, this is an attempt to show the vision of what the cloud connected to the car can be and how it can gather a lot of information from your lifestyle and optimize that experience you have when you're waking up in the morning and so on, for the best use of your time. So there's really a vision of how we can leverage information in the cloud combined with the vehicle to create a better experience.
And it seems like a very personal vision of a fully fleshed out sort of Internet of Things, right? Connected home, connected
Well,
device.
it's very much in line with what we always talk about anyway with our mobile devices, and they're getting more and more aware of us and thinking things out ahead of time and helping us in so many ways. But the feeling I got was, oh my gosh, this is a whole world built around the person being more important than the car, which is the feeling you should always get if you own a car. That somehow this thing is just my helper, my assistant, my friend. You know, I want to hug it. more than just
such good care.
More than just for the shape.
So, let's dig into some specifics about the technology that could enable this future. Do you imagine that you'll have open APIs, or do you have open APIs for development against the Ford platform, or would you build out an entirely new platform?
Well, I think a couple things, there's a couple parts of that question. One is open APIs. I think that the opportunity to leverage large development communities is an opportunity we can't pass up. We can't do all of this ourselves. And the opportunity to personalize it by having an open community that can use a set of APIs to develop for the vehicle is really key. And we've done that already. We've launched our AppLink product, which allows developers, Pandora, Stitcher, and a whole list of them, to develop apps, and we'll continue to expand that over time. But that's really key. to be able to use the smartphone and intelligence and horsepower on the phone to work with the vehicle seamlessly, and those APIs and making those APIs available to the developer are a key part of that plan.
Steve, what do you think about, I mean, we've seen a lot of, for example, smartphone platforms as a good example of trying to win over developers to various platforms.
Yeah,
What do you think about the
I'm
idea
almost
of-
always a very open thinker, and I think that a platform like this should be developed in such an open way that, of course, it's working with devices that are in your house, and it shouldn't be just a restricted few sets that, for example, that Ford sells. Ford should say, aha, we're making more than cars, we're making this a platform for cars to be universally, connected. And that platform, we will sell in our ways, or, we'll get it out and allow everyone in the world to use that platform. And then it has a chance of growing up and being something real and a part of our life in all of the products we buy, and everything will surge.
And do you think that's a platform that has to extend across car makers, or could Ford have a platform for developers, and Microsoft or Mercedes could have another,
Well, I think that's an important point is that leveraging the development community, which is, embracing a lot of small companies, startup companies as well, is very important. And they can't really afford to develop on separate platforms for each OEM, each original equipment manufacturer, automotive company. And so having a set of APIs, interfaces to the vehicle that are common, that they can develop for, and it'll work in Ford, GM, Chrysler, and so on, Toyota, et cetera, is really important. And that's what we've offered with AppLink and in our relationship with Geneva and Smart Device Link as well too. Opening up those APIs so that other auto manufacturers can use those same APIs, and then again, making it easier for developers to develop applications that work across several automotive manufacturers. I think that foundation is really important. The other piece that's important is this ecosystem we talk about: the car, the alarm clock, the house, and so on. We believe at Ford, we can't tell you what ecosystem you have to belong to. Whether it's an Apple ecosystem, a Microsoft ecosystem, a Google ecosystem, we've got to be agnostic to it. We've got to make our vehicle work with the things that you choose. And sync was important in doing that, allowing you to bring your phone and your carrier into the vehicle and so on. And as we look into the future, that's going to be important as well too. So if you have an Apple phone and you use Apple's mail system and so on, or if you have an Apple phone and you use Outlook, or if you have an Android phone and you use Outlook, or a Microsoft phone and so on, and Google Mail, those ecosystems have to be seamless. We don't want you to have to make sure that all those connections synchronize and put in encryption keys and all that kind of stuff to make sure all that stuff works together. We've got to make sure that the APIs and the infrastructure is there so all those things can work together seamlessly and then work with the car as well.
Yeah, and I'm a young developer in college, and I have a whole lot of ideas of how I might want to connect things to my car and to its world and tie them into things that are in my house. Might want to develop some new products, but I really want the ability to program this system. Somehow enter my own commands and direct some of my own linkings. I don't want to be stuck with a product. This is what you get when you buy it, and it never is expandable.
One of the things that we've done in research is we've created a platform on the research side called OpenXC, and it's available, and people can subscribe to it too, that plugs into the OBD2, the onboard diagnostics connector, and gives you a set of infrastructure, foundational infrastructure that you can work with, that developers can do, the do-it-yourselfers can get out there and start experimenting. It's an opportunity for us to learn what people need. So as we develop the formal APIs for AppLink and so on, we can take the learnings from that OpenXC platform that we've got put out there for the do-it-yourselfers, and then accumulate that information and decide what new APIs that we can build into our products.
Yeah, and you got something like the Nest thermometer that sort of learns when you're in and out of your house. Oh, but you're driving home half an hour early today, and it'll know in advance from your car, Signal. All these little things are going to be so fun for developers to develop and play with. And some of them will hit with people and some won't.
I think that's the huge opportunity, is because it allows for this personalization. Not everybody is going to want their thermostat connected to the car, but they may want the garage door opener or the front gate connected to the car, so on. So you can create a lot of this personalized stuff. As a large company, we intend to have to cater to the large volume of customers. Opening this up and allowing individual developers to satisfy smaller or more individual needs really allows that personalization of the vehicle that we can't necessarily do ourselves.
So there's a couple different approaches to that in the smartphone platform world, right? One is that all the apps have to be authorized and delivered by the publisher, by Apple. And then there's another school of thought, which is Android, and anybody can develop, and there is an official app store, but apps can come from all over. Do you feel like cars would have to be a little more locked down, like a little closer to Apple than Android?
Well, we certainly want to support as open as possible, but we are highly regulated. Safety issues, distraction issues are really important. So there's going to have to be some level of authorization, authentication, and so on for apps. We just can't have anything displayed in the vehicle, and we have to reflect the regulation that's on us and what's really good practice for things that are valuable in the vehicle versus things that probably are inappropriate for the vehicle. So there will have to be some kind of controls.
You can imagine kind of a learning curve there for potentially.
Well, lockdowns for safety, for example, it'd be more like if a cell phone company were to put in a cell phone, you can modify a lot of things, write your own apps, change some features of it, but not how the cellular phone system works. There's like some things that are little disasters. How the car operates in terms of safety, that would have to be very restricted, yeah.
Right, of course. So personalization, I know, is a big area of interest to you in the car, but user experience.
Well,
Key there.
yeah, but basically, get in the car, and it's got to be, if it's right in your face, you've got a whole bunch of your technology, from your Facebooks and your browsers and your email and your listening, and you got everything popping up, especially while you're driving. I don't think that's what really enhances the driving experience. Save that for when you're at home or you're not driving. Well, sure, if you have one of these automated vehicles that drives itself, then you're fine. You don't even need a steering wheel in front of you. You've got lots of room for your display right there.
And Facebook all you want. But until then it's more about, do you think that these technological advances should then be more about this convenience idea or closing the garage door for you or finding you a
And of course,
spot?
everything is hands-free as you can. Reaching over, we used to just have radio in a car, and that was about the most you did, changing cassettes. A number of people went off the road and crashed, changing cassettes. Now, if you're trying to tap your way through screens and you slightly miss and you have to back up, can you imagine how long your eye is off the road? And no, that's dangerous stuff, so you do not want to make that very prominent, except for passengers.
And that's the real key point in driver distraction. We do a lot of research. Some of you have had the opportunity to see our Vertex simulator, where we do a lot of HMI, human-machine interface work. And what we've learned is that it's keeping the eyes on the road. Very short glances away to look at something, get a piece of information, but you want that situational awareness. You want people to spend as much time looking at the road, being aware of things around them, potential dangers, and so on. And that's why voice recognition is such a strong part of our strategy as well, too, and why it's so important, because it does allow the hands on the wheel, eyes on the road.
And plus the car, more and more sensors, input and output, is a large part of this computer world. And computers are becoming so inexpensive to have so much computer, what we have in our pockets alone, and what you have in cars, so many dozens of processors, I hear, and dozens of sensors and little motors that do everything from windshield wipers. This is a very complicated system even compared to an iPhone as far as input-output goes. But, those sensors had better be, I want the ones that are looking ahead. Little bits of radar, little bits of vision, back of the car, front of the car, and warning me, very strong beeps when things are happening. Maybe even taking a little bit of drivetrain control, to make life a little safer. Maybe if we're short of a self-driving car, we still like what we have now, which is, cruise control distancing and lane keep and all that.
All right, well then let's see what chapter 2 of the EBOS has for us.
Sync greets you and says,
Your 8:30 meeting has been postponed until 9. Would you like to take the dynamic route to work?
you say yes. Sync announces,
The dynamic route has been calculated. Travel time, 25 minutes.
you grin, thinking about the thrilling twists and turns that weave through the mountains on this more fun route to work. Until you reach the start of the dynamic route, your vehicle remains in comfort mode. When the navigation system indicates that the dynamic route is just a half mile ahead, the Ford EVOS reaches out to the cloud once again. Weather, traffic, road map data, historic driver skill level and vehicle performance data are crunched. resulting in detailed information that allows the vehicle to refine braking, suspension, and steering settings in anticipation of the road ahead. The same data is also used to automatically adjust the vehicle's hybrid powertrain controls, providing the ideal mix of petrol and electric power to conquer extreme elevation changes while still conserving energy. As Sync announces,
Performance mode engaged.
the car instantly becomes a more aggressive, responsive, low-riding performance machine. In addition to enabling the change in vehicle dynamics, the cloud knows from the past that you like to listen to upbeat rock music while on this stretch of road and in performance mode. So, the internet radio stream automatically switches to intelligent shuffling mode. Only rock songs above a certain high beats per minute are played as you enjoy your drive. Being a performance driving enthusiast, you like to share great routes with your friends via social networks. The Ford Evo's concept constantly scans the cloud for updates. At a fork in the road, Sync mentions that
John and 2 other friends have tagged a new great driving road ahead. Would you like to take it?
you indicate that you would, and directions are recalculated as you take the right fork.
I wish I had a more interesting route to work.
I love it, but it's a little more towards a conscious computer than computers are today.
Yeah.
Because, you know, how would, I mean, it might say, oh, would you like to take a longer route, but, you know, or it might redirect you onto one because traffic's bad, but why would it say dynamic route? Or, you know, all these little phrasey things that are so human. I think that'll be.
Well, I think that a piece of that, I mentioned about enjoying, I'm not from California, but when I've been out, there's some nice roads in the mountains and so on. If I had time to extra time to get to my destination, I might want to have an enjoyable route instead of, you know, the typical one. I was mentioning also that I can't even remember this morning driving here. Right, I know when I left the house, I know when I got here, but I do that every day. It is just imprinted on me, and I just don't even think about it anymore. Right, and so that experience is just kind of lost time. Just, you know, I might have been thinking about these sessions here today and so on, but there might have been a more enjoyable way to spend my time this morning if I had the extra time. The key thing, though, is in there is something we call knows me well. My car knows me well. Right? And that's a huge opportunity to gather information and really anticipate. We talked about this before too, about anticipating your need and presenting things that are really tuned with you based on information about you. So it's not about, oh, I like this and now I got to reconfigure this or I got to ask a bunch of questions. It's about the car offering up, based on information that it has, offering up opportunities that from the data it knows you may like to take.
Yeah, let me suggest this, that you might want to. You've never taken that little route once before, but you feel like it today. Happens to everybody, a little intuitive feeling. Another human in the car might say, hey, you want to take a dynamic route today? They say, yeah, I feel like it. But how is a computer today, without consciousness, how does it know what humans like? It hasn't lived a human life. It hasn't gone through the swirls. It hasn't done skiing. It hasn't had wind going, you know, by its face, feeling it the way we do. So we've got to get the computers up a little more advanced before they totally know us. They can learn from us. They can watch our movements and learn, but you tend to learn certain things, but not necessarily everything.
I think some of the basics that even exist today is, for example, we should never have to program our home and where we work into the navigation system. For most people, you spend a lot of time during 8 to 5 o'clock at work, and from 5 o'clock at night till 8 in the morning at home. And so there's a good probability over a short period of time we can predict where your home is and where your work is. And so why should we impose on you the requirement to program that information when the system can learn that over time?
That's right. Anytime you can relieve humans of having to think of something, remember something, follow certain steps, that's what technology does for humans that makes life so good. That's what it's good. It should do work for us, and it should do thinking for us.
So when I leave tonight at 6 o'clock or whatever, it really should know that I'm likely on my way home. And so the traffic information that should be presented to me shouldn't be something that I have to go put a route in and then see what the traffic comes back. It can anticipate and say, based on routing home, this is the traffic information, right? With little effort on my part.
When we have those technologies now, of course, available with Google Now, is it possible that some of this is available sooner than we think? Whereas maybe the car doing the thinking for us is maybe a little further out?
Yeah.
Or
I was just gonna advise Jim not to let his wife use the car, because it might take her someplace he doesn't want her to know.
Well, that's, you know, it's really, Steve, that's really an important piece of the technology and enabler too, is that we're spending a lot of time researching as well too, is when you get in the car, how does the car know it's you?
Yes.
And is the car gonna keep my secrets secret from other people?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the last session, someone asked, I think, a really important question about privacy and data protection, because all of a sudden, you have to admit it, you're in the data game a little bit once you start dealing with people's email or their habits or their alarm clocks or their
Oh
refrigerators.
my God, yeah, every choice you make in your life practically, the system knows it.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say it's private, so I wish somebody would establish a system and say, your data is your data, it will never be given to anyone else for any reason, we'll only use it to help you get done what you want to do.
So the focus of these systems and the focus of EVOS is that information is collected and used to make a better experience for you. All right, it's not for other folks, it's for you, and so our focus is on certainly all the security that we can put in these systems to protect that information and make sure that, you know, if you opt into them, that, you know, it is really creating a better experience for you.
All right.
Well, where's my EVOS?
He's ready for the EVOS.
Because, you know, well, really, the thing is, sometimes ideas that are so far out there, some of them actually lead to better ideas than you've even discussed and thought of. You just, when you start to work on it. But the engineers have to, but you actually build something, that has value. And
Well-
just talking ideas is just, that's talk.
And I wonder, I mean, you know, we talked about this a little bit with the idea of APIs and letting developers kind of have a go at enabling this functionality, but, you know, you have mentioned before that Waze already does some of the social navigation that was mentioned in this video, that Google Now can predict that it's about time to go home and tell you traffic. Do you feel like consumers, for the most part, may want to just bring their own technology to the car?
Absolutely, and in fact, you know, if you look out into the future, I think it's going to be a merging of all those different sources. The built into the vehicle, what we refer to as the built-in, the brought-in through your smartphone, and the beamed-in, which is what's connected to the cloud. And those three pieces are going to work together in different proportions. Over time, as things develop, some of it may shift. Some kinds of functionality, some kind of features and experiences may be more leveraged from the cloud than they are today. They may be embedded today heavily, but in the future get a lot more information from the cloud or being driven more from the cloud. So I think you're going to see that change over time as the infrastructure matures to be able to enable these experiences.
Do any of you know what Waze is?
Yes.
Some of you. Waze is a navigation system, W-A-Z-E, and socially, you see other friends and your Waze friends on the highways, and anybody using Waze can quickly enter data saying that traffic is slow here, there's an accident on the side of the road, I just saw a cop, and you can put that information and it's all fed to you. It works a lot better when the passenger, my wife, is using Waze. I would never do that driving, but it's really cool, and it just gives you an awful lot more than just technology alone.
You know, it's interesting too, because I know talking to states, municipalities, Department of Transportation, all this infrastructure, the wires in the road and cameras and so on to collect information, it really doesn't end up being real time. A lot of it comes through the municipalities and gets aggregated and so on. By the time you get it, you know, that accident's cleared. And where Waze is real-time information where people, as they experience things, are entering information in real time. And you think about overcoming some of those obstacles of spending money on the infrastructure and so on. You know, if you make it simple for people to report, and then you aggregate the information and statistics to make sure it's accurate and so on, it's a far more efficient way to do it. The key thing, though, is being able to do it, as Steve points out, finding the way, the HMI, human-machine interface, so that you can do it safely in the vehicle.
Yeah, because I have found that Waze is downright terrifying if you're the driver, and it's giving you a ton of information. It gives you little badges when you pass a cop without getting pulled over, you know, that kind
It
of
tends
stuff.
to distract you, but and a little bit of voice, because you have to enter by tapping, you can't do it as a driver. But it's kind of neat because, yeah, you're real time. It says, cop was spotted, you know, right up ahead of you. It points on the map and it says cop was spotted 1 minute and 20 seconds ago.
Right.
I mean, it's right down to the timing.
So is that, apparently the cop thing is so valuable that Google just spent $1 billion on Waze, by the way.
But also
It's very- the
traffic
traffic
speeds it
is
takes
also-
into account very well.
So,
Well, I
so
think
is that
one other thing that I think that if I I can interrupt it on ways that's really interesting, is that people are also reporting on the roads, where there's construction, where there are new roads created and so on. You know, Navtech and other map manufacturers have to send out, Google and so on, have to send out their cars to map all this information in real time. And it's constantly changing. We know not only road repair, but new subdivision, new areas are added. Waze gives a chance for people to report that information and augment those maps, make those maps more real time and live.
There's a detour up today.
Yep.
They got 2 lanes closed today.
So is that a way around the having to build out an always connected infrastructure? Do you think that people could use the car zone connection or even their mobile device connection to be sort of a giant mesh network instead of having to have
It's
sensors?
an interesting question, and I want to relate it to what we call vehicle to infrastructure. And those projects are going on now with the Department of Transportation. If we are able to have vehicles aware of other vehicles and vehicles aware of traffic lights and other infrastructure, we can improve on traffic, we can improve on safety and so on. But the step change in putting that infrastructure in the vehicle, the radios, the transmitters and so on, is really a big step. Working all that out. And a lot of us believe that there are some short-term things that we can do leveraging current technologies, 3G, 4G, and so on, to get some of those features. Maybe not the full safety-related features and so on, but certainly communication in real time of traffic information, slowdowns, and so on, can leverage the 3G, 4G network like Waze does.
And to be disruptive, you've got to take huge steps in technology, real notable ones that grab people. Oh my gosh, this is something so new in my life. Or it has to be totally invisibly, no more expensive, one or the other.
Right.
You know, if you're just gonna increase features a little bit and innovate, it better be the same price. But if it's, it's worth a little bit more if it's one of those totally new things that you never thought was gonna exist. Oh my gosh, this is gonna take us in a different direction. That disrupts how life is. And disruption to me always means some companies go out of business or they start to feel the pressure real bad.
Very true. All right, we'll talk about that after chapter 3 of EVOS, and we'll see if we get to work on time.
Driving enjoyment is one thing, but the Ford EVOS concept also looks after your wellness. The dynamic route turns out to be an intense switchback down a mountainside with sheer drops raising the thrill factor. You grip the wheel harder, confident in the car's performance capabilities, but clearly feeling a rush of excitement. The car senses the excitement as well. The heart rate monitoring seat picks up on your elevated heart rate. Combined with vehicle performance data, the car determines that you are nearing the peak of your driving workload. To keep you safe and focused, all but the most vital gauges, such as speed and revs, disappear from the digital interface. The instrument panel indicates that your smartphone has been put into Do Not Disturb mode, saving calls, texts, and emails for later. Ultimately, the fun must end and the workday must begin. You return to the route that leads down into the city, but not before passing directly through the smog that hangs over it. Drawing on data from sensors and air quality information pulled from the cloud, the vehicle immediately takes action to protect your lungs. The car's advanced filtration system activates, while Sync speaks up.
High pollution levels detected. Would you like to divert to the cleanest route?
You accept the suggestion and take a cleaner path into the city.
Well, the first part of that vision is one that we're pretty passionate about in Ford, and it has to do with what we call workload management. When you look at the challenges of driver distraction and so on, it's really not one size fits all. In other words, every condition is exactly the same, ban everything and so on. There are certain conditions, driving down a nice straight highway, a sunny day in the middle of the day and so on with light traffic, you're the individual, and looking at health and so on, your capability is a bit higher than on a twisty road at night when it's raining and so on. And so therefore, having a system that can monitor those conditions and then adjust what you can do and can't do based on the current conditions is we think, is a far better way to manage driver distraction and so on. And again, we can see even in the laws that have been put in place eliminating texting and so on, we're all very supportive of it, but in a lot of cases, people have just moved texting from here to here, which may be actually in a worse situation trying to text down here instead of closer to your eyes on the road. So workload management, I think, is a key part of what you see here. Understanding the surroundings and adjusting the performance, adjusting the system to the current performance.
And earlier I was telling Jim how that one car, and if you're kind of like somehow steering it, just something about where you are, keeping your lane or whatever, it'll bring up a cup of coffee telling you you're getting drowsy and time to do this, and there's devices that supposedly look at your eyes and determine that sort of thing. Well, Jim was telling me that if I'm driving here and I take my hands off and I'm pouring a drink and I'm steering with my knees, that they can tell that too. And
Yeah, the amount of torque you put into the steering wheel is, you're constantly making corrections, small corrections, and those are very characteristic. If you're solid on the wheel, which is typically if you're focusing on something else, it tends to indicate that you're distracted or maybe a little drowsy or whatever. That's not the normal condition. So we can use that kind of information to make suggestions. Hey, something's not right here. Maybe it's time to stop for a cup of coffee.
Do you think
the car
that-
slows down on its own.
Right. Well, do you think those are the kind of nuances that consumers will respond to? I mean, subtlety isn't always the best approach with stubborn people who can opt out of some of these features.
Well, I think, kind of the harsh method doesn't work either. Just saying you can't do, because again, like I said, moving text, folks using text messaging and looking at it down here and so on. So, and lots of bells and whistles and chimes and so on to indicate a problem is annoyance as well too.
Whatever
So
people are gonna do, here's your example of up here and down there. Whatever people are gonna do, we should at least try to make it as safe as we can.
Right.
Come up with the modes where it is the least distractive.
Right, and so that's, why voice recognition and using sync and so on and hands-free is so important, because it allows you, we do a lot of studies, we've done a lot of studies in the Vertex simulator and so on that says, keep the eyes on the road, quick glances away, and return back to the road as quick as possible. And voice recognition really helps that. There are other technologies that in the future will help that as well.
Yeah, so speaking of input, it sounds like both of you, no pun intended, are pretty standardized on the idea of voice as the input technology with the most potential in the car.
I don't know, maybe it's just so getting older that it seems so hard to reach over and push buttons, Of course, I was with a younger assistant once and she was texting and driving and oh yeah, she hit a curb. So I don't know if it's age only, but just going over and looking very quickly and trying to find the button. And nowadays, it doesn't get it on the screen. You got to tap a second time. It's even worse. So no, you don't want to be operating anything in the car. I don't even like to take phone calls hands-free in the car. Very few of them do I take anymore.
Voice is continuously improved, and it's going to continue to improve in the future. And we talk really from just the signal path and getting the signal of your voice through to the system, and then interpreting it into the words. And that final step, which is really the most important one, is understanding the meaning. Right? Meaning is what we ultimately want. We don't really care what you say. We really want to know what you mean. And I think there's still some challenges ahead, but I think there's a lot of good progress with neural networks and other things to really take what we're hearing from you and turn it into real meaning and taking action on. Again, that frees you up from having to learn a grammar and learning how to say things in specific orders and stuttering or making other kinds of comments in the middle or whatever. Understanding that meaning in the end is really the experience that customers want.
How far are we, do you think, from that? Because I feel like voice still is so promising. And man, when it is frustrating, I actually feel my stress, I shy away from voice in the car because when it doesn't work, my stress gets so high that I'm afraid I'm gonna crash. I'm gonna drive right off the bridge in a rage.
Fair enough. I think we continue to make a lot of progress there. I think IBM has demonstrated some things and some real progress on it, using a lot of hardware to be able to do that. And again, as performance of machines get faster and faster, a lot of that is going to be more able to be delivered in smaller, more embedded systems as well too. So I don't know really what the time frame is, but I know that I just came back from a meeting with one of our researchers that is having some discussions on deep neural networks and so on for that kind of technology.
Any other promising input technologies like eye gaze?
I'm pretty excited. You mentioned eye gaze. I'm pretty excited about eye gaze. I don't know yet whether it's a great answer or not, but the idea of being able to have you focus on the things around you while you're driving, in front of you and so on, and being able to use gaze detection, not only as a driver distraction thing to tell you when you're not looking in the right places, but also as an input to say, hey, what's that? right? If you're looking at something, knowing what you're looking at, knowing the direction you're looking at, and being able to say, what's that, and having that image then be processed and fed back to you to say, hey, that's the Washington Monument, and it's open from 8 to 5 and on weekdays or something like that. That seems pretty cool to me. And again, that's just added, the added piece of that is augmented reality as well too, being able to use heads-up display and advanced heads-up display to again give you information in that line of sight, right? So that you don't have to be looking down or looking away at the center stack and so on. So I'm pretty excited about eye gaze detection. A lot of progress. There's still progress needed in that area, but from an advanced research point of view, we're certainly looking at gaze detection.
Yeah, well, trying to illustrate human things like gazes and voice, I mean, we don't know how the brain is wired actually, so we kind of have to program these things and seem like the best we can. Voice recognition has gotten much further on all technology equipment today, all technology than I ever thought it would in my life. It understands the phonemes well, it puts together the correct words, choosing choices when it gets incorrect data. It must be filtering frequencies in the air and rhythms of the speech that's coming. It's pretty amazing that the microphone can be not right in front of your mouth anymore. It can be way over there in a car with extra car noise and still get the words right. You know, so when I say, you know, set the speed to 102, it says setting temperature to 102, you know, or something like that, just an example.
I told you he was a speeder.
But,
That's speed 202.
no, not really. Most people that know me know I'm kind of not a speeder, but.
I like this though, I like
That was
this.
kilometers.
Kilometers.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's just like, but it's the least distractive way to talk to, communicate to your car when you want to make small little changes as you're going. Constant use, like the computer use, the heavy duty stuff in the car, we're building that into a lot of cars now, you know, and they've got the whole Facebook screen and the internet connections and all the normal stuff. And I just don't think, I don't see drivers really using it or having accidents as they do.
Right.
You know, a couple of people I knew at Apple that bought Teslas had their accidents.
Right off the bat. There's a lot of tech in
Yeah.
our car. All right, well then let's check back in on the EVOs and talk about some other ways that it's making us healthy and safe in our slightly dystopian future.
Entering the city and merging with the highway traffic, Sync says,
Switching to full electric mode, you may now use the electric vehicle only lane.
you merge into the EV only lane and zip ahead of the slow-moving fossil fuelers in the other lanes. While in electric mode, your vehicle transmits a signal that can be read by toll booths and police vehicles, identifying it as an electric even though it has a tailpipe. Although you were initially routed around traffic, Sync says,
Low speed traffic detected ahead due to recent accident. Would you like me to control the throttle until traffic clears?
you consent and ask Sync to read a few emails while you let the car manage the stop-and-go driving. Because the car knows exactly where it is headed and has learned that you always look for parking with wireless EV charging at your destination, it scans for available inductive charging parking places near the office. When a space has been located, it is automatically reserved via a cloud-based transaction. Sync says,
Electric vehicle parking with inductive charging capability, located reserved, rerouting to your parking place.
you drive to your parking place guided by turn-by-turn directions that take you directly to your reserved spot, where the car automatically centers itself over the inductive charging device. Now it's time for you to go to work. But when you return, EVOs will be charged up and ready for your next adventure. The Ford EVOs concept, the ultimate expression of Ford design and technology.
When are we gonna have the wireless? Do we have the wireless inductive charging? That's pretty sweet.
Not yet, it's.
So that implies
I want that.
batteries, not hydrogen fuel cell.
That's true.
So with the batteries and wireless charging under the vehicle and so on, it's something that we're working on with our suppliers and so on. You know, I think it's very real. The alignment is very important. You want to get a very efficient transfer of energy. We don't want any cats in between while you're doing that, so you have to worry about how you know, obstructions and so on are handled. You know, there's a lot of combination and fusion of technology that you can bring together. You know, our park assist systems can help you park, and you know, using sensors on the vehicle, we can detect things around the vehicle as well too. So it's coming along. That's an area that really requires standardization, right? So that those parking spaces will work across all auto manufacturers as well. So again, there's a lot of collaborative effort going on with those designs as well.
You bring up a good point though, because there seems to be talk since electric vehicles haven't completely taken off. Talk of maybe rerouting to fuel cell technologies instead, or continuing to explore.
You know, going to a whole change in driving, whether it's just, you know, very computer-based cars, electric run cars someday, it's so disruptive, but it's so difficult to do because the infrastructure is sometimes not just the vehicles, but things like charging stations, roads in cities, everything we're used to, what people are used to. You have to change almost everything in the world. One of the things I like about this Evo car, the way it's being shown, portrayed, is that it's kind of smart on its own, but it's really a normal car that can drive on normal streets. So at least you don't have to modify the huge amount. And almost everything in here is totally possible and doable, and even considerable at a reasonable cost with today's technology. It's not like science fiction movies sometimes go further than this.
Right.
But it's really, these technologies are really here and close. I think this video was made by an engineer, not a science fiction writer.
These two, by the way, are absolutely convinced, and it's an awesome debate to have with them, that engineers are the only ones who actually change the world. Everybody else just talks about it.
You know,
So
it's an interesting subject too, because we want to encourage, innovation is so important to our economy and our country and so on, and we want to encourage young people to really get engaged and consider engineering as a field. And a lot of the talk out there is about engineering is about math and science, you know, math, and so on, that scares folks away. And so many young people today, I was at a talk in Washington, D.C., or discussion in Washington, D.C. about this. So many folks are scared away by that, but they also want to change the world. Young people today want to get into careers that will really have some impact. They haven't associated the fact that engineers are responsible for so many things that are around us, making things happen. Actually, you know, creating things that, you know, a lot of things that are in this room today wouldn't have happened without an engineer's involvement in it. So getting that message across that it's not just about mathematics and so on, it's about that creativity and solving problems, creating better experiences for people, creating experiences that people fall in love with using technology.
We're all born curious. We're all born wanting to create things of our own and make things and show them off. And, you know, mathematics is not necessarily difficult, it's also fun. Like my wife and I, we're both mathematicians, but when we go to a hotel room, we don't judge it by the bed or the view, we judge it by the number on the door. Is it a good number? I think sort of okay this time, 8, 6, 8, and 8 is 2 to the 3rd power, and 6 is 2 times 3. So there's sort of, if I can make a little formula out of anything, it's sort of a good number. But yeah, engineers, we work so hard in Silicon Valley, and we create these new devices. And then, for some reason, the reporters in New York get paid more to write about them.
no comment.
I
I'm a reporter in San Francisco, it's completely different.
But what we have to do in our head to create new things that didn't exist before, it is so difficult of thinking. You know, if you could see the path because somebody else took it, or you know it gets to an end point because they've gotten there before, you find it quickly. When you're doing it, these new creations, it is so difficult and hard work. You have all-nighters, and you drink a lot of Coca-Cola and coffee, and you know, so what you have in your head is as much as any doctor or lawyer has to have. We just don't get paid like that.
I really enjoy, Steve, your discussion with Apple One and so on, and making computers affordable, right? And making computers affordable as an enabler to experiences that they can create and help people be more efficient.
Well, finding the formula to make computers affordable was what happened, but at that exact point in time, the building blocks, the materials that you build things out of are important. Same thing with cars. I was just talking to somebody about the incredible materials they use in some of the Ford automobiles now. But the certain kinds of chips and memory and microprocessors had just gotten to the point it was possible to make a useful computer at an affordable price. But I was looking for it and sniffing, so I found it.
It was the perfect time in history. So speaking of engineering geniuses, are there startups out there? It feels like there's a lot of companies who are coming into your space that haven't traditionally been automakers. Google, Tesla, other kinds of startups who are playing in this field. How do you respond to that? Do you feel the pressure?
Actually, we really embrace it. In fact, since since the financial recovery and so on, we've really gone out to focus on partnerships, big and small, not just the Googles and the Facebooks and the Microsofts and so on, but also the startups. We've got our Silicon Valley office that part of their charter is to really be integrated into the Silicon Valley area where there's a lot of innovation going on. I have what I refer to as a technology scout in Israel that's doing a similar kind of thing, trying to find these small innovators. I have some things that I'm really excited to talk about, but I can't talk about relative to voice recognition and so on. But these guys that have targeted a specific area and solving a specific problem, we're really embracing their ability to work with us in partnership. And so I think that's something that's really changed at the Ford Motor Company, and it doesn't have to be just large companies, large startups. Is there such a thing as a large startup? The large companies, but also the small startup companies that really have an idea, and we think it can really create a new experience for Ford customers, and also give Ford differentiation, some leadership through differentiation by offering this new experience.
And Steve, what do you think about innovation in the car space? Do you think it's going to come from Ford? Just pretend Jim's not here. You think it's going to come from Ford or
From the people I've met here, I really do. I really admire this company so much, yeah. And I think of very, very different things. Self-driving cars, the all-electric Tesla cars, they're very different, but they don't make sense until they're economically right. And I think Ford has a good sense to wait around. They have their rules. And see, when I was making a transformation from the old analog world of televisions and radios to the digital world of computers, you had to know both ends of it. So Ford is so knowledgeable about all the aspects of driving, roads, this and that, and then we're going to move towards maybe electric vehicles. A company like Ford is very likely to be in position, but don't jump out and do it when it's just a very high-priced luxury car in a small market. Wait until you can do it right and you found the components and the formula that makes it affordable. And and as far as things like self-driving cars, I would estimate that Ford is well along on that here, heading in that direction, and there'll be a lot of companies. Eventually, I think that's going to be a part of our life.
We have a lot of work going on in that area. I enjoyed last week a drive event that we had internal to the company. I had a chance to, we've talked about this earlier, the experience, the different kind of an experience you have in a car that's, has automated driving. This particular one, you brought it up to speed, you engaged it, and then you let go of the steering wheel. And we're on the test track, and it's rounding the test track and so on. And the first lap, I was kind of like this, not touching the steering wheel, but the hands were ready to grab it. The second lap, I started to get a bit more comfortable. There's some places where there's a guardrail that approaches the side of the road, and you're kind of, as the car's approaching and you're not holding onto the wheel and so on, you're kind of second guessing, should I be prepared just in case or whatever, because of course this is a prototype. But it really is something that is a dramatic change in experience as well too. But there's a lot of activity going on here. We're pretty excited about it. There's a lot of challenges yet to solve, but it is about, automated driving is about making us better drivers. We do spend a lot of time looking at the different drivers, and if you think about Driving Skills for Life was mentioned in one of the earlier panels. As we have young drivers starting for the first time, they have very little experience. They have skill because they took the driver's ed exam, they've studied and so on. They don't have that actual experience on the road, and so they're more apt to have problems as they're gaining experience. We probably peak somewhere in our life cycle and where we're really the optimum driver, and as we age, we lose some speed and reaction time and so on. And so we become poor drivers as we age too, and especially with aging populations that we have, we've got to deal with that as well too. So automated driving really provides the opportunity to kind of level that, to bring up everybody's performance to a much higher level. And so we view automated driving as a way of helping improve driver performance.
Well, it's funny, you just know as you've driven, you gain skills in your brain. And of course, we're going to have to program a lot of those skills into the self-driving cars, but they'll be a lot safer because they're already past that peak of learning. And I remember one of my sons, when he was like 14, he totaled 2 of my Mercedes convertibles driving drunk. And he's the best driver in the world. He's the best, safest. You feel the most confident, when you're with him. You just feel good because he's got over his crashes early. You know, when you have a crash, you sort of learn, I'm gonna be a little more cautious from this.
You know,
point.
where we
My
are
son
here,
doesn't have to live that way.
where we are here in Michigan and with our winter.
You lived.
Yeah.
You were a test driver, you lived.
Yeah.
The guy who bought
That's right.
Segway went off a cliff on his Segway, so.
So in Michigan here, we always talk about, especially for young people and for my daughters and so on, it was that first winter, that first experience in snow and ice and getting them through that. I mean, there's something about being able to handle a vehicle on a slick road in snow and ice and so on, that you just learn how to react. That's competency versus skill, right?
But that's another real good place for electronics, you know, making the differences in, you know, the ABS and the wheels noticing which ones are skidding and compensating, and eventually they'll correct even steering the right direction instead of the wrong.
Well, and in fact, cameras looking forward, right? Being able to spot patches or, you know, road hazards or, you know, those potholes in the road and so on.
20 cars ahead, all at angles.
Yeah. All right, well, there's no greater disruption to the drive than not driving, so that seems like a good place to take some questions from the audience. I see Alan's there with a microphone, so raise your hand and he'll bring it around to you.
Me? Yep. All right, cool. First of all, awesome panel, guys. Thank you. So I want to go back to the cloud connected and open SDK concept you mentioned earlier, which I know you sounded like it wasn't a sure thing, but an idea. Car tech and access to systems inside the car has been kind of a closed system traditionally, so this is kind of a change in direction in a lot of ways. So, kind of a two-part question. So get ready for this. So, number one, is this pins and needles? Number one, is this a sign of a changing concept to how you approach the software and the operating systems of a car to more openness? Number two, obvious security implications too, and I'm sure that's their piece of the coin. I mean, introducing potential malware to your car is not exciting. Have you thought about that yet, or is it still just kind of tossing around the idea of what's possible?
Well, the Open SDK for our APIs with a product called AppLink is out there already. And what we're trying to do there is, rather than modify the software in the vehicle, we're allowing users, developers and so on, to build applications on the smartphone that has connections through those APIs that can use some of the assets in the vehicle. And what we're doing is we're using like the OpenXC research platform to decide, well, what are some of the additional pieces of information that we should provide through new APIs so that people can develop new experiences as well too, help us prioritize on those. Obviously, we're very sensitive to opening everything up and every single signal up because of the security issues and the regulatory issues as well too. We have a lot of effort going on embedded security in embedded. Our strategy today with a brought-in device says that, hey, the security, the safety, the information and so on is on that phone, and that phone has to be protected and so on. But the vehicle is kind of firewalled off from what we call the consumer side. And so we've got some really good security protocols and security architectures built in today. As we advance, as we have this continuous cloud connected, we're going to have to advance those architectures as well too. So looking at embedded security, working with our colleagues here at Ford in IT that have expertise on the enterprise security side, combining that information into what our strategy is going forward. But open platforms, definitely, a step at a time, giving people, and we think we've given them on our OpenXC, as well as our app developer SDK and so on, a lot of tools to start with. So there's a lot of things they can do, and we'll keep adding to that over time, step by step.
Hi, my name's Joe. I have a question regarding the technology that you're bringing in. There was some talk about bringing in the phone and bringing in the technology. Ford traditionally has been known for reliability. You bought an old Mustang, you could keep it going forever. You bought an old F-150, you could keep it going forever. As more of a traditional gearhead, I have vehicles, I've named them, they've been around 15 years. How do you see these new systems in a world where you throw away a computer after a year and a half? How do you see like that fusion over there going 20 years and 300,000 miles?
Well, I think it starts with a focus on building a platform in the vehicle, a compute platform in the vehicle that you can add services and add experiences to. Software is a great tool for being able to do that. We get this question often in terms of upgrading hardware and so on, and we're not at that stage yet where you're going to plug in and upgrade memory and so on. Maybe it'll happen in the future, but at this point in time, we think that having a platform in the vehicle, being able to do software updates today through USB download and so on, gives a chance to not only address issues where customers the feedback may be that they really didn't like the way this worked and there's a better way to do it. We can work on those things, but also add new capabilities as well too. And we've done that with Sync. When we originally launched Sync, subsequent to that, we launched our 911 Assist, and for some folks it was a software upgrade and other features like traffic directions and information and so on. So again, creating a platform, much like learning from the computer industry on creating a capable platform, building enough capability in there that you could build services on top of that and create new surprise and delights over time for customers. And that's something I think that's radically different where we are in the auto industry today versus where we were even 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, you can imagine car owners having to get used to upgrades and hopefully over-the-air upgrades.
Well, he named a couple of cars that were worth keeping around forever, keep running forever, but I would assume that the automobile controls to its actual drive mechanisms, the things that have to be regulated for safety by law, will have a fixed set of interfaces, fixed protocol, and this extra connect to the world, connect to the internet, connect to your home, and all that. This kind of electronics would be independent enough of it that it can be switched and swapped as well. If it gets past an upgrade period, you need a really new or better one.
Yeah.
Before we go to the next question, just get a plug-in for developer.ford.com if you want to develop for us.
Over-the-air upgrades.
I'm going to ask the question, how much connectivity is too much? And I ask for the preface that no matter how well you design technology, it's not completely fail-safe. Do we ever run the risk of going to a point where individuals lose the ability to respond or to react or just to think, because inherently we built such a safe net or series of connectivities that we lose that sort of feeling that we need to know this stuff? And is there a point where you can go too far?
Yeah, but the thing is, when it happens, you don't look at it as, we look at it as bad, any change in life that we know, and now people can't do what we can do, it must be bad future. But at the time it happens, they won't think it's bad at all, they'll just think it's natural and normal, they'll be moving on to new ways of creating other experiences. Would people want, playing with your gadgets is almost a fun thing, to have them and use them in the bits that you can use your own muscles. And in a car, I don't think people are going to give up the desire to have a car that they can operate on their own. Not for a very, very long time. And if it became all automatic, they might say, why do I have a car? I can take a bus and do the exact same things. But I don't, it's not worth looking at these things as bad or good, because you can't stop it. What's going to happen, the trend and the modification of cars, getting more and more computer in them, and what it leads to is just a huge, huge steamroller. You can't stop it, so you kind of have to get out of the way, let it happen. Try it, but obviously education, people still want to know maybe what the past was, but we're going to be living in the future.
Well, two comments I'd make on that is, one is that we're always going to want to keep the driver engaged or close to engagement. We don't want them completely disengaged and so on, for a lot of reasons, safety reasons and so on, unanticipated things where they have to take control and so on. And it's a whole subject in itself on how you actually do that, and a lot of research going on in that. But over time, we're going to address these issues and so on. But the other part of it is that we are really trying to appeal to what customers want, and that's also a challenge too, because there's some customers that want everything, and they want it simple and intuitive. It's complex, all these kinds of things that you can do, and they want it intuitive. And we look at that as a challenge. And we think that there's technology that needs to be developed that helps people, or helps the system really work better with people. So it's intuitive when you start. It's kind of a learning curve for you, and it's really adjusting and presenting things to you based on, your wants and needs over time. So we shouldn't throw everything at you right at the beginning. We should kind of progress along with your progression and your comfort level. And if your comfort level stops at some point, then don't try to push beyond that. And so learning systems is a key part of that. Learning systems as it relates to the human-machine interface is a key part of that, and there's still a lot of work to be done in that area.
And Jim's hitting a bit on quality versus quantity. You know, you're afraid of quantity, more and more and more tech. Well, if it's in our face and we see it, then that's bad quality. It should just be invisible. I want to live my life and decide what I want to do, and it should be helping me, thinking, reminding me of things, doing something that a good assistant would do maybe.
So it's like a fear, just wondering if there is a point when you think about this, we shouldn't go beyond a certain level. Is there a thought process to where is too much?
Well, I think
It's open into question.
the one area is really around what's appropriate in the vehicle and what's not.
My own opinion is a cell phone in a car is too much, but you know, everybody has their own ideas. I don't even want to take phone calls anymore. I don't like them happening because I miss an exit or two while I'm on the call.
We'll do 2 more questions. So Jeff.
Jeffrey Barrows from Geekazine. I'm a musician, and you were talking about the eyes on the road and getting ready to fall asleep type stuff, and it kind of happened to me last Saturday night when I was driving back from a gig, and it was about 10 miles away from the home, and I started, kind of getting what I call road vertigo, where you just look at the road and you just can't really stare at it anymore. So I'm a big proponent, can't wait for the self-driving cars for a situation like that. But my question is, you talk a lot about the vocal, hey, wake up type stuff. What about the other senses? Maybe I'm not talking like smelling salts coming through, and if you're falling asleep, but maybe rolls down the window so it brings a breeze into your face, or fresh smell of bread or something like that.
Coffee and bacon.
Bacon, yes, bacon. Where's the bacon?
I think there's 2 halves of that. One is sensing information, right? Sensing heartbeat and sensing, eye movement and eyelids and the rest, facial movement and so on. And then the other is the output and the feedback, turning the blower speed up, or turning the temperature down, or whatever, to kind of get your attention, the radio volume up as appropriate, or changing the station as well too. But we have to still experiment with that to see what's the right thing and what's not going to be annoying, what really works effectively versus what can annoy. Because we don't want the opposite consequence where people have the capability and they turn it off because they're annoyed by it. So it's a good question. A lot of work that's going on there, a lot of research around how do we detect, whether it's through sensors or whether it's through cameras and so on, what the condition of the driver is, and provide that kind of feedback.
So many sensors have gotten so inexpensive. I look at my iPhone, and it's just amazing. It has an eye that can watch me, see my eye movement someday. It has ears that can hear me. It has movement sensors like our middle ear. It knows where it is from GPS. I don't even know where I am when I wake up. And I think to be really in the human world, putting the human more important than technology, someday it should have smell. And this applies to the technology in the cars. They should become something that we love more, like they're a person. And a person would have a sense of smell. So I really like that suggestion, knowing when you might just like to lower the windows or raise them, or tell you that maybe you want to shower before going to work.
Last question right here.
So as you develop new safety technologies and features that are specifically geared toward reducing driver workload, to what extent do regulatory agencies help or hurt you in that process?
Well, I think that we have a close relationship working with them, sharing our research and information and so on, and helping guide them on what we think if they're going to issue guidelines or regulatory requirements and so on. Sharing that data is really important to us. So working collaboratively is always really important. And focusing on the things that we think are important, as well as creating a database of information that can be used on both parts. So I think collaboration is the best. The intentions that NHTSA and DOT have are absolutely the same intentions we have. We want to have safe driving. We want to eliminate injury and so on. The challenge is that we are responsible for finding the solutions, the technology solutions to do that. And if we don't find the technology solutions, they feel obligated to regulate. And so, the responsibility is on us to really work with good data with them so that they can make responsible decisions and legislation and so on. But also for us to find the technical solutions that can solve those problems without regulation.
All right, I think that'll do it for today, everyone. Please join me in thanking Steve and Jim for some brilliant